evening, everyone. All right. Shabbat Shalom. Well, we're going to open up this evening. This is the new moon celebration and of the month of Aviv. The month of Aviv is the first month of the year. So everybody say Happy New Year. All right. Isn't it interesting that God's New Year is not lined up with man's New Year? I don't know what happened, but it sure isn't lined up together, is it? You know, in fact, we could actually say that there is two New Years every year in the beginning here, because the New Year, the year actually, according to Genesis and creation, when he created the sun and the moon on the same day, but he set the sun to rule over the day and the moon over the night, but also that in creation, the sun and the moon both were involved in the very first day of the year. And but we know that those two events are separated, and we see that a solar year, meaning a year that is the beginning when the sun is in conjunction, or the same, not conjunction, I'm sorry, when the sun there's the same amount of time in the day as there is in the night. And so that's called spring equinox. We talked before, and of course that's the beginning of the solar year. But when the new moon comes in the spring here, right after the vernal equinox, then we see that that's the beginning of the lunar year. Get it right here in a minute. So we got both of them here that was just within a few days of each other. The spring equinox, if you look it up astronomically, it's on the 17th or 18th. Of course, according to Gregorian calendar, it's March 2021. So anyway, but this is the beginning of the lunar year. And interesting that it fell this year on the 1st of April. And that's the interesting part about it falling upon April the 1st is also known throughout the world that this is April Fool's Day. And and it was kind of interesting because I know the origins of it, but I was just looked it up on the internet to see what kind of things that they had on there. Most of them said, well, we really don't know the origins of it, but it's celebrated all over the year, and all over the country, and different countries have different celebrations, and it's about telling somebody something that's not really true, and playing tricks upon them and these types of things. But one of them says, well, it says its origin may be because of in the 1500s in France that when they joined the rest of the European nations over there and recognized the Gregorian calendar that changed the beginning of the year from around April the 1st to January the 1st. So that they said that could be the reason why that's April Fools, and of course that is the reason that those people that stood with the beginning of the year being in around April, because that's when Aviv is, and that's when the beginning of God's calendar is. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that of all of the ones that I looked at, that was the only one, and it said it could be that was the origin. But the rest of them says unknown origin. So it's kind of interesting. So we've talked about that before, but I thought I'd just bring it up around again because we're in the first of Aviv. And we know, of course, that the meaning of the word Aviv means green ears. So it's directly connected to the idea of spring, bringing on all the plants. And as you begin to notice even here in dead, dry West Texas, that we've got a little bit of grass is turning green. And that was one of the things we noticed today. We played some golf today, and there was grass that was turning green on the golf course. So that's got to be a sure sign in West Texas of spring is sprung, right? Of course, the big thing in West Texas is when all of the mesquite bushes start to bloom, then winter is over. Officially, spring and summer has begun. So, so that's kind of what I thought we'd just kind of talk about a little bit. Didn't have a whole lot. In fact, I was wanting to read, this is in Leviticus 25. In our Torah portions, we are in Leviticus. We started Leviticus a couple of weeks ago, and we found that there's, of course, a lot of interesting things in Leviticus. Most people think, well, it's pretty boring and it doesn't have anything to do with us, and that it's just something those old Jews put together, and first one thing another. So, but I want to read you something that I think is very much bringing the whole world into the idea of a particular event that will take place in our time, or very shortly, maybe after we're not here, but we all think that we're in the last days and the end times and those types of things. So this is an end time event that we find in the Old Testament that hasn't really met fulfillment, and to a bigger, greater extent, a lot of people don't even know what it is about. So if you want to follow me, we're going to read in Leviticus 25. And of course, if you go on the internet, you'll find a bunch of different takes on Leviticus 25 here. And so I'm going to make a quick read of it. This is chapter 25. The Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, speaking to the children of Israel, and raise this up a little bit, and say unto them, when you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Shabbat, or a Sabbath, unto the Lord. Now, we have such a controversy over keeping the seventh-day Sabbath, mankind, but yet here is something different here that's being talked about, a Sabbath of the land. It says, 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyards, and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land. A Sabbath for the Lord, thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. And, this used to be a real thing among the farming communities, is that they let their land rest. And but because of not having anything to raise, they kind of got greedy and said, well, how are we going to survive if we don't do this? So they substituted a thing called crop rotation, and they would plant different crops in different fields, and then the next year they would rotate them and do it that way. Of course, that's not really what the Father had in mind when he put together this idea of having a Sabbath for the land, a Sabbath of rest for the land. So, and we have a hard time in our 24-hour-7 workday world that we live in if we really told people that this is what the Lord wants for your land, is to let it rest. So we're going on at 5. That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of the vine undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servant, and for thy maids, and for thy hired servants, for thy strangers that sojourned with you. And for thy cattle, and for the beasts that are in the land, shall all the increase thereof be meat. Wasn't that you couldn't partake of it, it was that you just didn't harvest it and sell it and these types of things. You lived upon those things that come up on their own, because you had basically planted the sixth year, and in the following year that you didn't plant anything, but what was in the field that grew, then that's what your meat was. It says, and thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto you, 7 times 7 years, and the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years. So not only do we have a 7-year Sabbath of the land, but we have a 50th year rest of the land, the 49th into the 50th year to rest that land. Then shalt thou cause a trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all of your land. So, we talk about the last trump and these types of things. I think that this will be that last trump that is talked about throughout the New Testament. It says at the last trump, then God will appear and angels will ascend and so on and so forth. So, and ye shall hallow, or make holy, the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and you shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. So just think about this. If every 7th year you basically had a paid vacation for a whole year, you didn't have to work for a whole year. Would you buy into that? Would you like to do that? A whole year, no work, don't have to worry about where you're going to get your food, all these different types of things. And then you're going to have 7 of these, and then that 50th year you will have another one, a whole year of not working, taking it easy, picking up your crops and things when you get hungry. Sounds like a heck of a deal. I'd like to go to work for that guy, wouldn't y'all? I mean, see if that would work for us, right? But we're scared to death if we don't work every 7th day. Well, we're not going to have food to take care of our family. We're going to starve. We're not going to be able to pay our bills. And this thing here is guaranteed that you're going to have something to eat. Your bill, you're not going to have to worry about anything. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of thy vine undressed, for it is the jubilee. It shall be holy unto you. and you shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. In the year of this Jubilee you shall return every man unto his possession. Okay? There's some pretty interesting laws that are set forth here and principles of living on the land and living from the land. And if thou sell aught unto thy neighbor, or borrow anything of thy neighbor's hand, you shall not oppress one another. It says, according to the number of years after the Jubilee, thou shalt buy of thy neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the fruits, he shall sell unto you. In other words, if you want to be a large farmer, landowner, and so forth, you could lease out your land. But that lease would only be good for the number of years that was in 50 years, okay? So, even that principle has been used in our country for a number of years in leases. You've heard of a 50-year lease or a 100-year lease. Same thing. You would pay the amount of money that land's going to provide for you during whatever of the years, wherever you are in the beginning of that Jubilee. If you was at the end of it, then you would only have 7 years or something of that nature. So, according to the multitude of years, thou shalt increase the price thereof, and according to the fewness of years, thou shalt diminish the price of it. For according to the number of the years of the fruits doeth he sell unto you. It says, ye shall not therefore oppress one another, but thou shalt fear thy God, for I am the Lord your God. Wherefore you shall do my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and you shall dwell in the land in safety. Here's one of the promises he's making, if you will do this, is that you will live there safely. You're not going to have to worry about anything. And the land shall yield her fruit, and you shall eat your field and dwell therein in safety. In other words, you're not going to have to worry about that the crops are going to come in, or you're not going to have enough food to make it through the winter, or so on and so forth. In fact, you'll see that it's more than 1 year that this food will be provided to you. And if you shall say, what shall we eat the 7th year? Behold, we shall not sow, nor gather in our increase. Then I will command my blessings upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years. I don't know if you've ever heard the idea of a bumper crop. Have you ever heard of a bumper crop? Well, they happen. Most people don't realize why, but those people that have raised particularly vegetables and fruit trees and so on and so forth, that you will have a year that it just puts on prolifically, more than you could ever do anything with, because that is one of the either Shemitah year, which is the 7-year rest, or the 50th year release. So it'll put on enough fruit to bring you through 3 years. So that's why that they would can and prepare and put up all vegetables and fruits and things. I saw this in myself right up here in Seminole. They used to have peach orchards up there. One day I was up there and it was about picking time, and they had a place right there, a building where that they picked them and put them in boxes and did all those types of things. And so the field had been kind of picked, and I thought, well, man, there's still a lot of fruit. Stopped in there and asked him, I said, y'all sell? And he said, no. He said, whatever's out there on those trees you can have. Just go out there and pick them. And that was the biggest peach that I had ever seen in West Texas. They were big as softballs. And the trees were just loaded, and they had already went through. Of course, the problem was that if they pick peaches while it's green, those that get ripe, they won't, because they can't transport them. they'll get bad in a hurry. So that's a bumper crop. I've seen it. And I'm sure if you've been around any farming at all, you've seen it. And I think even in the quantity of fruit that you look at sometimes, sometimes you go to a grocery store and the oranges are real small. And that same navel orange, maybe the next year or whatever, or year before, was twice as big. Say, okay, then I will command my blessings upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years. And you shall sow the 8th year and eat yet of the old fruit until the 9th year. Until her fruits come in, you shall eat of the old store. So he's going to take care of you for 3 to 4 years off of a crop that you planted way back. Now that's truly a blessing, right? The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for you are strangers and sojourners with me. That's really a strange idea because, we live in a land where that you can own private property, even though in reality you don't ever really own it because you have to pay taxes on it every year. And if you don't pay taxes every year, you won't own it. But in this system here that God set up, he says, I'm going to give you all of this land, but it belongs to me, but I'm going to bless you. Everything that you put on this land, everything that you plant is going to be more than abundant blessings to come to you. And in all the land of your possession you shall grant a redemption for the land. If your brother be waxen poor and has sold away some of his possession, and if any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. Okay? So this took care of keeping the estate in the family, so to speak. If you had to sell it for whatever reasons, but your kinfolk could pay back that and redeem that land back. And if the man have none to redeem it, and himself be able to redeem it, then let him count the years of the sale thereof, and restore the overplus upon the man to whom he sold it, that he may return unto his possessions. And it goes in and it talks about all of these different circumstances about land and about goods and even persons themselves. If you have basically sold yourself into servitude, then you can be redeemed by one of your kinfolk, or if you can pay the money back and bring yourself out of servitude. So this system is set up that it takes care of the poor. There is really no poor if this system is followed, okay? So one of the things we want to look at, back up here a little bit, and wanted to look in Exodus 12. Because when you really start to look in the definition or the dictionary or whatever for Jubilee, there's only about 2 places where the word Jubilee is used. But it's interesting how that there's a couple of places that we see because of the wording that it was either in a Jubilee or a Shemitah. It was either in the 7-year release or the 50-year release. So we're going to go to Exodus 12. Exodus 12. And this sets the real time of the children of Israel being delivered out of slavery in Egypt. This is the first verse, and the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So this is the very time of the year that we're living in today. This is the first month of the year. And he goes on and it teaches, Speak you unto the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the sows. Every man according to the eating shall make your account for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two sides of the post and on the upper doorpost of the house wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast in fire his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof. And you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. And that which remaineth of it until the morning you shall burn with fire. And thus shall you eat it, with your loins girded, your soles on your feet, your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. Okay? For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Jehovah. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses which you are, where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. So this whole thing, of course, that we are coming up on here within 2 weeks, to have this meal together as a representation of the memorial of the things that took place, being released out of bondage out of Egypt. And we've read this, and we'll be reading it again. But there's something in particular here that I want to find here that makes it the connection. This is the connection to what we're reading in Leviticus 25 about the Jubilee. This is chapter 19 of Exodus. And I'm going to kind of skip read through the first part, beginning of the first verse. In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they unto the wilderness of Sinai. Now, if you remember, this is back what we read in 12 was the night that they came out. The death angel passed over, and then they left. This is 3 months later, okay? For they were departed from Rephidim and were come to the desert of Sinai and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I have bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. Well, remember that what we read in Leviticus 25, he says, I own the land, but you're going to be allowed to live on it. You can live on it as long as you follow my commands. You follow my form of government that I'm going to set up with you. These are government governing laws or principles of God's kingdom, okay? Says, now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, I think I read that, and number 6, and you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak unto you, and believe you forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready again against the third day, for the third day the Lord will come down into the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, take heed to yourselves that you go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever touches the mount shall be surely put to death. There shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through, and whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. Okay? When the trumpet sounded long, they shall come up to the mount. And Moses went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, be ready against the third day, come not at your wives. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there was thunderings and lightnings and thick clouds upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp and to meet with God, and they stood at the thither part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. So we might ask, well, what is that in the world got to do with Jubilee? Well, there's a word up here in English that's translated in the Hebrew, and gives you the true meaning of what's going on here, or when this is actually. So back here in 13, man, it says, and when the trumpet sounded long. When you look up that word trumpet, in fact, I can read it to you. It's pretty interesting. Let's see what I did with it. Here it is. Yeah, if I remember the number of it. I thought I wrote the number down, but I didn't. See? But you can look it up in your concordance, your Hebrew. Look up the word right there, trumpet. Okay? And that word in Hebrew is Yobel. Yobel in Hebrew means Jubilee. So, there was a Jubilee at the time that God brought the children of Israel out of Egypt. And it makes sense, because what is Jubilee that we learned? It is a total release of all people back to their possessions, back to their families. And that's what the rescue of all of Israel from Egypt was about. So we find that that the time that this took place was during a jubilee. So it's pretty interesting. So, and this is, really before Leviticus was written, yet we know that the God's law was in existence from the foundation of the world. So, but, these are the things, the jewels that we find when we look into Hebrew at these words. And we see that the meaning of this has been hidden all of this time from us. We just read trumpet. He said, oh, well, he blew the trumpet real loud and all the people come up to the mountain. Well, it gave us a time. It gives us the setting of what was going on. Why that this particular time, in fact, we can read in Exodus and places where it says, in fact, probably back in 12 or right before, it said it would have been 430 years that they had been in captivity, and that they come out the very day that they went into captivity, 430 years before. So then you've got two things to look at. One is Passover. If they come out on the very day that they went in, it was the Passover. It was the day that they left, that night. The other is, if this was a Jubilee here, then there's a good possibility that that was a Jubilee back there. So, and so you might think, well, what's the Jubilee got to do with anything, Well, because that's one of the principles of God's kingdom that has not been fully realized. I want to read you another account that will show you a time period on an event that we probably never looked at either. This is in Joshua. We see that in Joshua 4 and also 3, when they got to the Jordan River, it was at flood stage, but once again, God saw them safely over the river, parted it, so to speak, for them to cross, and they immediately circumcised them, which was kind of interesting since they had been in the wilderness for 40 years, and seemingly their children that they had in the wilderness had never been circumcised. So he circumcised them, and they came up out of the Jordan on a particular day. This is in 4:19. And the people came up out of Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and encamped in Gilgal in the east border of Jericho. So what's the 10th day of the first month? Well, of course, it's leading up to the Passover, but if you remember all the ordinances that has to do with the Passover, they were to take the lamb that they were going to sacrifice, and they were to put it up on that 10th day, to put it in a pen by itself and to bring it maybe even to the house, and that examine it, making sure that it's perfect for the sacrifice of the Passover. So this was that very time that they were doing this, when they come up out of the Jordan River into the land there, and a day of examination, because he circumcised them that day. And they were 3 days, once again, there there before the Passover and before the time that they actually went into the battle against Jericho. So once again, a release could have been in the year of a Shemitah, a 7-year release. More than likely it was, because when they come up out of Egypt, I don't know if that was actually a Jubilee, probably so. So it would have had to have been 50 years, and so it was only 40 years, but it could have been a 7-year period of time. So these are some of the things that we see, and plus if you go back to Leviticus 25, it tells you when that this Jubilee begins. Like all of God's feast days, it tells you exactly what day of what month that this feast is going to happen. Same thing with the Jubilee. It happens on the 10th day of the 7th month. And the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. Okay. So if that that trumpet sounds for the Jubilee on that day, and that day is when all the sins that have been accumulated are taken out of the sanctuary and cleansed, the sanctuary being cleansed, placed upon the scapegoat, and so on and so forth. And we know that 5 days after that time period, which is the beginning of the Tabernacles, Feast of Tabernacles, which in reality is the marriage supper of the Lamb. So, and that Jubilee that is in that final atonement is the final Jubilee of probationary time here on earth. Okay? So, because it is the judgment, basically, to know who is going to be released, so to speak. So, and as we read last Shabbat about the 8th day, pointing to that new beginnings, there were 7 days of the Feast of Tabernacles, followed by the next day, the 8th day, Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day of Holy Convocation, entering into a new millennium, entering into the time that the earth will once again enjoy its Sabbath. That is going to be a Jubilee. In my opinion, it'll last for 1,000 years, because it says that the land will lay desolate. It will enjoy its rest. The earth will enjoy its rest without man, and so on and so forth on it. And I know other people have different ideas, but I just think that the Jubilee points to that very thing, that the land will rest for 1,000 years. Because that 1,000th year is the 7,000th year. It's always about sevens. 7, 7, 7. 7-day Sabbath, 7 days of unleavened bread, 7 days of feast, on and on and on. They're all 7. 7, 7 times 7, is 49, 50 days of Jubilee. All of these different types of things all have sevens, all appointed with sevens. So I just wanted to share that with you all. I hope that you got something out of it, maybe pricked your interest, that you might want to dig into it a little bit deeper yourselves. And but these are patterns that the Father set forth from the very beginning, when he created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th, and said for mankind to rest on the 7th day. He rests on the 7th year, rest on the 49th and 50th year, and on and on and on and on. So all of these are patterns, I think, that shows what all the feast days are really pointing towards is the final redemption of mankind, the final events that will take place on this earth before the time runs out. So if we have 6,000 years of man on the earth, the 7,000th year of the Shabbat, man off the earth and the earth resting, and then the new beginnings on the 8,000th year, the new Jerusalem coming down, so on and so forth. So it's something I think that ought to prick your interest a little bit, and I hope that you were able to follow and maybe gain some insight yourself, because I challenge you, all of us, to study all these things. Don't just believe what you hear or what you see or what I say. Just look at all of the evidence, look at the scriptures, and show yourself approved. You know, that's what the Bible says. So I want to say happy new moon and happy new year, and Shabbat Shalom, and hope y'all enjoyed being here and partaking of the word of the Father.
Thank you for watching a teaching from Emet HaTorah. If you are ever in the Odessa area, we would love to welcome you to our Shabbat service, 11 a.m. every Sabbath. For more information or for more teachings, feel free to find us on the web, www.emethatorohodessa.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Thank you. God bless you and your family. Shalom.